Well, it's been a while, and the crazy thing is usually by this time you kind of have your routines of things kind of set and ready to roll. There's a lot of routines that aren't normal right now, and there's a lot of things that we're still, outside of the actual game that we're still trying to piece together. Just because obviously the first game of the year, and with all the other things and stipulations that are going on, that more than anything, I don't want to take away from the football side of things, but there are a lot of different things that us as coaches are having to do. So hopefully we can keep our kids out of that stuff and they can just focus on playing, because it's been probably 2 months of practice without hitting somebody different, and I think more than anything that's what they're looking forward to. And still being a few more days to practice, it makes it really, really difficult. So happy that we got those 20 days out at higher ground. The next month that we spent back here kind of off and on, trying to have some semblance of preparation, but not doing too much and not doing too little has been quite a unique situation. And but more than anything, I think everybody is really, really excited for Saturday.
Hi, Coach.
How we doing?
Good. How have the kids handled that transition now back to game week? Because I know it's been kind of weird with a couple days a week and ramping down, but now they've got to fully ramp back up.
I mean, again, we're going into what we would say is a normal Wednesday practice today. So they handled it good yesterday. I still think that there's a lot to be done, and there's a lot to be able to handle. So it's not easy. It's not easy because everybody's so anxious to get out there and play like you would be in any normal game. But the reality is, normally that first game, you're coming off of camp. There are some things about kind of winding down from camp that got you into that first week. So they've handled it well. We got to really see how we can do here late in the week to make sure we can stay focused and not be too over emotional and be too anxious to be able to go out and play and play the way we should.
Okay, so go with your questions if you got them.
Coach, can you give us a scouting report on the Governors?
And what exactly you're looking for, I'm not sure, but I think it's a tale of two teams. I think in week one you saw a really kind of energetic and fast football team. Week two, I think it was really difficult because some things happened really quick and the thing got out of control. But more than anything, I think you're looking at a team that this is their last game, and I think our guys got to make sure they understand that this is kind of their season. They have a 3-game season, and they're going to come in with nothing holding back. And they have athletes, they have players. They're going to give us a test in many different ways. But what it really comes down to is us, and us focusing on ourselves, us focusing on the things that we need to do and what we need to control, and not as much about who they are. Doesn't mean we aren't studying. Doesn't mean we don't know exactly what they do out of what formation and what defense and things like that. But always in week one, and it's our week one, you got to really focus on yourself, and you got to make sure you're doing the little things the way you need to do them and get yourself into those routines of not just preparing to play the game, but actually in playing the game.
Coach, it's been just over 3 years since your first game, the first time you guys played Austin Peay. What do you remember from that game? And I'm sure it feels like longer than 3 years ago.
I remember that if Brian Wright didn't tip a ball and catch it probably there in the red zone, it would have been even tighter than it already was. It's not a blur. It's still something I remember. I can remember the formation that they gave us that we had a lot of trouble with running option back out the backside. But more than anything, I just remember that it was a scramble, and there was nothing that felt really comfortable. And I'm not comparing this year to that first year. I'm not comparing their team to what their team was 4 years ago. But there's a lot of things that are of somewhat similarities going into this year, being all the different protocols and the time, and uniquely different with a lot of unknowns. Not as much unknowns of what our kids will do on a football field, but just unknowns of how we're going to handle, not playing or practicing for 2 months and then going out to play a game, and not being in a whole lot of those live situations and tackling, and especially in the last month that kind of gives you that anxiety that you're ready, but like that first year, you're kind of curious as to how all these things are going to unfold.
How much of that anxiety is playing a team that has 2 games under their belt before you get in your first one?
It does. I mean, there's some things that say, well, you get to see what they're doing. The reality is, you always believe you make some of your best jumps from week 1 to week 2, and actually seeing yourself play and be able to make corrections and getting guys back under control, as opposed to that week 1, whether it's jitters or anxieties of things. Again, for us, it's got to be about us. We got to focus on the things that we need to do. That has nothing to do with Austin Peay. It was a lot of the same things we talked about last year winning the UCLA game. In week 1, you don't always know what you're going to get. That's why you got to focus on yourself. Us being different, that they've played 2 games, you got a better idea of what you're going to get. But the reality is, it's still week 1 for us. And more than anything, in week 1, you got to really focus on the things that you do and do them well.
I'm trying to ask this question in a creative way because I know what your answer will be, that you live under a rock and you don't pay attention to all the things that go on outside the program. But when you look at the rankings, when you look at expectations outside of the program, there's a lot of positive noise around your program. A lot of people think you guys can do something special this year. Without actually knowing where people have you ranked, how aware are you that this team could do something special this year, that they are set up perhaps to make a run at something that's never been done at UC?
Well, there's a lot of things that have been done here, and they've had some really, really good teams. So I think that gives us something to shoot for. But we had that idea going into the season. Even everything being normal, had we played the schedule we played, we would have had, a first 4 games that would have been much different than the first 4 games last year. You were going to have a team that was going to bring back a lot of returning starters and a lot of key returning starters, meaning a quarterback, an offensive line, and a defensive line, that no matter what, if you got those guys coming back and you believe you're strong there, is going to give you an opportunity to make a run. A run at what? Whether that's a league title or whatever. So you knew going into this season that you were going to have to handle those expectations. I know, the whole plan going into camp, there was a lot of things that we were going to do based on that. So we were going to do things different. What got kind of turned upside down is obviously the whole situation, not just the schedule and the change of schedule, but just how, the COVID was, and how the, not knowing a lot of different things and all the different things that you had to do, that you kind of got away from worrying about, what this team can do and, what all the chatter and talk is going to do to their minds, because you had so many other COVID issues and social injustice issues that you were trying to make sure you knew your team and had the grasp of your team and the pulse of your team about those things, as opposed to what expectations are. I think now, as we get into game week, some semblance of normalcy. Now you start to hear those things. We got to do a really good job at managing that. I've always said that I feel a lot better when people are doubting you and saying negative things, because that's a motivation. In a different light now that we're into the season and into a opponent that which we can see, I think we got to make sure that these first few weeks that we're being able to handle a lot of those situations the right way, and making sure we're putting on film who we really are.
Ranked?
No, I do see some things on Twitter. I don't know what that really is. I do have a 18-year-old son that likes to tell me some of those things. Hey, do you know what Desmond? I said, no, I don't. And I don't want to know what they said. So you come out of a volleyball game or girls, you're around a lot of other people. Hey, they really like you guys a lot. So I don't like when people say that, and I just keep walking. So I don't know exactly. I know there's a lot of discrepancies in rankings anyway. But nonetheless, we can't be naive. That rock that I live under, we can't be naive to not understand what our kids are hearing and how that can affect them. And we got to really do a great job. Not just me, but I mean as a whole, as a coaching staff and as leaders of this team, we got to do a really good job at making sure our guys understand how we got to this point, why we got to this point, and what we need to do to keep it going.
Coach, how you doing?
I'm doing well.
I want to ask you, you got any incoming guys that you expect to play a lot this week?
Well, there's going to definitely be some new faces, and I think at the wide receiver spot there's going to be a lot of new faces that people will see, and that's not just mean they're new guys. We got a couple grad transfer guys, and Michael Young and Jordan Jones are two guys that I think that you'll see. But there's also some guys that were freshmen last year that are going to step up in those positions, and true freshmen at the wide receiver spot. So I think where you're still going to have the household names of some of the guys up front, offensive line, defensive line, and Desmond Ritter. There's going to be some names that maybe some even forgot. The Jared Dokes of the world that have played a lot of football, maybe not in the last 2 years, more so in their first year. That are going to, I think, really have a breakout year. So it's hard to pinpoint because I do believe we've got some depth and we've got a lot of guys that are coming back, but there's definitely a good handful of guys that people might not know as much about. And usually those guys, when they're in those positions where they can catch touchdowns or, get rushing yards or they become a little bit more noticeable. Usually when those new guys are guys up front like John Williams that, I think can be a really, really good offensive lineman even this year. They still might not know much about his name, but when, Jerome Ford carries the ball and looks really good, it's a little bit easier to recognize those things. Or Michael Young or one of them catch a ball down the field or a touchdown, it's a little bit easier to recognize.
Hey, Luke, just wanted to ask you, for all the drama that's going on in the Big Ten and elsewhere right now, just how grateful are you just to be in a game week and just able to just focus on football right now?
Is there drama going on in the Big Ten and other places? I live under that rock, remember? No, very grateful, but just understand that I said the same thing as I watched, my kids play. I'm very grateful for this, and then after you get about halfway through one game, you forget about the gratefulness sometimes and start to get into the things that you really want to happen. And I am incredibly grateful. I think our team is incredibly grateful for this opportunity, but with that comes a lot of other things. And I don't want to just sit here and sound like we're just grateful to play. Now that we have the opportunity to play, we got to do what we're supposed to do. And that means getting our mindset back into, the preparation, the training, the study, and the things that we need to do to be really successful. It's not just okay to be grateful that we're playing and go out there and be average, because we're not going to accept that. So there's a balance there. I think it always starts off with grateful. It will end with being grateful for this opportunity. But in the midst of it is, now we've got an obligation to and some standards to uphold.
Coach Lovins from Austin Peay talked yesterday about getting tested 3 times a week the past couple weeks for Pitt and for you guys, and that whole process on there. And I'm assuming it's a similar process for you guys this week. What's that been like on your side of things?
Sunday, Wednesday, Friday. We've still got some more to go. So it's inconvenient, but again, that's another one of those things that's just a great reminder. Actually, I think it's better, not just because we're getting tested so that we know where we are, but it's also a great reminder to our guys. I keep reiterating to them that there's a lot of opponents that are out there that we don't see. Obviously, COVID is one of them, but when you're constantly reminded because you're being tested, it's really hard to relapse and to just become complacent. So I think in a lot of different things, I think the testing is going to help us throughout the entire year to make sure we don't lose focus on the things we need to do to still have the opportunity to play. And you can start to forget about those things. You can start to forget about, obviously the coach. You can start to forget about the social stuff that's going on within our country because you get thrown into game week and, the preparations and the opponents that are obvious to see. There's a lot of the things that we got to make sure we understand that are out there that we still got to be able to handle. And I know that happens to us both mentally as well as emotionally.